Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Hey, you don't like Scatman Crothers? Yeah, Hong Kong Fooey was problematic. You got a point. Hello and welcome to the GSMC television podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC podcast network, and I'm your sheltering in place host, Howard Fletcher. I am here with my engineer, Jack the Black Pug. We are very, very, very happy that you could join us today. And if you're a veteran to this program, you know what to expect. So go ahead, strap in. I have a great show for you today. If you're new to the show, thank you for choosing to spend some time with me. I know that you have a plethora of content out there, both podcasts and other that you could have chosen, you could have selected to spend your time, and you didn't. So we're honored to have you. Stick around for a while. I think you'll find something you like. If not, if I'm lucky, you will hate it so much that you'll tell your friends to tune in because they cannot believe that someone like me could have a show. But hopefully you just tell them to tune in because you had a lot of fun. Big show today, but I have to say that COVID-19 flavors a lot of the topics we are hitting today. So if I had to name this episode, it would be called The Rona Effect. The cable and streaming folks at Showtime are experiencing a positive surge, so we're going to be talking about that. We'll discuss the changes to the media in general that'll probably be around as a result of COVID-19 and the things that we've had to do during this break. My provider of cable, Verizon Fios, they had losses. They lost quite a bit of folks to cord cutting because people are going to streaming. We'll talk about that. And I have some news about what's in the future for the MCU, especially on DisneyPlus. That's how it ties into this TV podcast. And as always, I will bring you breaking news and we'll have a recap of Westworld Season 3, Episode 7, which is scheduled to air this Sunday. But first, we hear some breaking news. You know, we've been all locked down at these stay-at-home orders that have been given out by governors. But a handful of states are starting to reopen for business. I don't know if that's the wisest thing to do, but as a result of the social distancing guidelines that we're under right now, many theaters around the country are closed. In fact, last episode I talked about AMC and Regal and some other major chains that have closed altogether, shut down, until things get back to some bit of normal. Major chains aren't expected to open again until July at the earliest. But I see where in Oklahoma there's one theater that's making plans to open well before July. Oh, hey. Governor Kevin Stitt, who stirred controversy in March when he posted a photo of himself and his kids at a crowded restaurant, which wasn't the wisest thing to do, announced on Wednesday that many businesses, including theaters, will be allowed to reopen on Friday, May the 1st. That's in Oklahoma. Kevin Stitt is the governor of Oklahoma. At Circle Cinema in Tulsa, owner Clark Wines doesn't plan to open the doors quite that fast, but he does intend to reopen sometime in May, and he is changing his operations to get ready. He has installed plexiglass screens in between the seats or some of the rows, and he expects his employees to wear masks and gloves. We made a lot of changes, said Kevin in an interview. We want to do all we can so you will not have to have physical contact with anything in the theater besides setting your posterior in the seat. And that's smart. It's wise. I'm glad he's doing that. Or at least he's taking some steps. Now, whether it works or not, I don't know. Circle Cinema may end up serving as a test case for future moviegoing in the COVID-19 era. So far, a number of drive-in theaters around the country have remained open on the theory that patrons can watch a movie safely from their cars. Going to the bathroom, meanwhile, still poses a challenge. Public bathrooms remain open, even in the grocery store or wherever you go that's still open, but I guess you just go at your own risk and probably bring your own paper, which was always the case. But even in Georgia, where Governor Brian Kemp lifted the restrictions on theaters effective next Monday, it does not appear that any indoor theaters have felt safe reopening. Going to the movies, unlike, say, getting a haircut, still seems relatively inessential to a lot of people. One study suggested that coronavirus may be transmitted through air conditioning systems, suggesting that theater going might still be somewhat risky. In Oklahoma, state public health authorities say that cases have been declining enough so that the state can enter phase 1 of reopening. However, that's not the case in Tulsa. In Tulsa, infections have still been rising, as well as the deaths. Even so, Mayor G.T. Bynum announced on Friday that the city would go along with the state mandate to reopen. Bynum said that cases would inevitably trend upwards as communities surrounding Tulsa open up, and that therefore it would be futile to ask his constituents to remain inside indefinitely. Is a quote, "I cannot in good conscience ask Tulsans to continue making these extreme personal and financial sacrifices at such a level in pursuit of a goal that will be impossible to reach in any reasonable period of time," Bynum said. After Bynum's announcement, Wines, that's the gentleman with the theater, said he consulted with his staff of about 8 people to see if they were comfortable returning to work. They're all gung-ho, he said. They are willing and excited about coming back to work, although they are concerned about their health. Wines, and it could be Weens, so I might be mispronouncing his name, but I'm going to continue calling him Wines, had obtained a Paycheck Protection Program loan, so he was able to keep his employees on staff throughout the closure. Now they are focused on communicating with patrons and making adjustments in operations in anticipation of reopening. He plans to have paper salt packets instead of a dispenser and to change the butter dispenser so patrons will not have to touch anything. Employees will wipe down the seats in between shows, and he will probably only be able to have about 50% capacity at most of the shows. It's going to be spaced seating, so no one will sit directly in front of you or behind you, he said. He's not yet sure whether patrons will have to wear masks, which he acknowledges would make it difficult to eat popcorn. It would. He plans to send a survey to his email list asking customers what they would be comfortable with. One idea is to have a souvenir Circle Cinema mask, which I'm sure people would love sporting around town. Then there's the question of what'll show. Circle Cinema is an art house theater, and Weens gets most of his films from IFC, Searchlight, and Sony Pictures Classics. We are getting a title from Sony Pictures Classics, he said. I don't know the name. How do you not know the name? I don't know the name. It won't be La La Land or The Shape of Water. It will be more marginal. Now that sounds like a true Tulsan. I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. He expects to open sometime between May 15th and June 1st. I think we'll be okay, he said. The key unanswered question, he said, is at what point do you as an individual feel relaxed going to a movie theater? And that's why I'm bringing this up. And that's a question I'd like you to answer if you email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com. At what point do you as an individual feel relaxed going to a movie theater? I think the answer is going to be when there's a vaccine. But this isn't a vaccine podcast. It's a TV podcast. Why do I bring this up? Because until people do feel comfortable going into theaters, I don't care if everyone sits in telephone booths. I think that streaming is going to be the way to go for most of these movies. Now, especially a theater like his that are showing art house movies that it looks like when he mentioned titles like La La Land and The Shape of Water that have already been in the theaters, I'm assuming this is a place that shows movies that have already been run. He's not getting first run indie films. If he did, then he would mention that. But I guess he may not. I don't know. I'm not from Tulsa. If he's running content that you can get at home, I don't think it's going to do much good to put up plexiglass. I just don't think people are going to even want to have that experience. I think theaters, as I've said on this show before, are going to be the place where you get the early look at big budget spectacular movies like the James Bond films, Star Wars, Mission Impossible, etc., where the selling point is that you can get the big screen experience and also you can get the first look at the flick before the general public. But you're going to have to sit in a crowd. I think there's going to be spacing. I think that's going to be something that's going to be normalized in theaters. People are not going to be sitting as closely together for quite a while. They'll probably have 2 seats together so you can still make out, but not you don't want to be sitting real close to strangers that much in the near future. Anyway, I thought you might find that interesting. I did. That people are going to try to get creative in these movie theaters. And ultimately, the question is, exactly what he said at the end. At what point does an individual feel relaxed going to a movie theater? Next, we're going to talk about Showtime. Showtime is seeing some surges in their signups, as well as some of the other cablers. Talk to you soon. Go get something to drink. I'll be right back.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. It keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Okay. He was good in The Shining. You gotta like this cat, man. Come on. All right. We are back. And I have Showtime. I don't know if you guys have Showtime. I enjoy some of the programming on there. I don't like it. If I had to choose between Showtime and HBO, or I'd pick HBO over any of the pay channels right now. I think Epix has raised its game. I think if I were to rank them, I would rank HBO at the top, and then Epix, then Showtime, and then way down would be Cinemax, in my book. But some people love Cinemax. Anyway, right now, people are rather penned in at these stay-at-home measures that we find ourselves under right now and trying to stay well. Hope you all are doing a good job of doing that. And, we're trying to fend off a pandemic. America's audiences are turning to their television screens for comfort and distraction. Not that they don't do that anyway, more than they probably should, but we're doing it more now that we have more time on our hands. Now, Netflix, for one, as I reported on the last episode, saw an estimated 1.8 million subscriber jump in their paid subscribers. In its most recently reported quarterly report, which they reported last week. more than twice as many as the streaming company expected. Every year companies make projections. And of course, they didn't figure in a pandemic and stay-at-home orders. But I don't think they could have they would necessarily have projected that they pulled the numbers that they did. It's just the right time and right place. But they're not the only direct-to-consumer service that is seeing such an increase. Showtime and Showtime's streaming service called Showtime OTT I'm not familiar with Showtime OTT again. I'm the guy doing the TV podcast. I should, but I have Showtime Anytime, which is the way I can stream it as a subscriber on my cable network. But apparently they have a streaming channel, which I guess was like HBO Now. Showtime OTT has seen an uptick after announcing on March 20th that it would offer an extended 30-day free trial to new customers. Sign-ups have popped an average of 148% in the last 4 weeks. Time spent on the service and total plays are each up more than 50%, with at-home audiences gravitating slightly toward movies more than TV. Viewership of the original TV series is up 50%, while movie viewership is up nearly 80%. Well, that makes sense. Especially for people that are not usually in front of the television set. It's harder to dive into a series because you don't have enough time to invest in the plot or the character development, where if you just have, decide you want to spend an hour or two, well, not an hour, but 2 or 3 hours in front of the television set, a movie is a good choice. Viacom CBS Chief Executive Bob Bakish has said that Showtime and CBS All Access are collectively on track to reach 16 million paid subscriptions by the end of 2020. But it doesn't say what they expected to get, but I guess 16 million is a lot to them. Because as I just said, Netflix got that in 3 months. The cablers' activity began to pick up around March 13th through March 15th. And those are the days immediately after California Governor Gavin Newsom strongly advised that gatherings of more than 250 people should be postponed or canceled altogether. Showtime saw a 50% increase in free trial subscriptions and viewership in the week after the governor's announcement, followed by another 50% bump the week after that. So I guess when they said, hey, okay, you can't go anywhere, people were like, boom, I'm hitting Showtime. Showtime has not been the only network to offer a freebie during this time in order to soothe the anxious at home time. That's not why they did it. They did it to try to get more people to sign up and pay. That's just smart business. Bravo. HBO, CBS All Access, and AMC are among the other networks that have offered free programming or extended free trials. While it's still too early to fully parse the data, given that the extended trial has just lapped the month mark, an executive at Showtime says that this period could possibly be the best month of viewership and free trial subscriptions that the company has ever seen. Okay, I'm going to amend that. I can say that it has definitely been the best month of viewership and free trial subscriptions that the company has ever seen. Because I watch TV, I'm doing a TV podcast, and I'm telling you, I was just not hip to Showtime OTT. All right? So if I hadn't heard of it, a lot of people hadn't heard of it, and they didn't hear about it until they got home to do this. But I understand him not having the numbers in front of him. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would bet some money, and I would be willing to lose some money because I think I would win that bet. Anyway, on Showtime's streaming platform, series such as Billions, Shameless, and the current season of Homeland have been driving originals viewership alongside Penny Dreadful and Twin Peaks: The Return, the latter two of which doubled their audiences. Now, of all those series that were named, I just don't watch Shameless. I watch Billions. Billions is going to start a week from now, the new season. Can't wait for that. Homeland is going to have their finale on Sunday, and it's been an excellent series. It's really time to go ahead and, put a period on that. So they're ending probably a couple of seasons too late, but I'm glad to see it come to an end. Penny Dreadful, they are going to also start a series on Sunday. It's a spinoff of sorts from the now canceled Penny Dreadful series. That wasn't so dreadful, but it just couldn't get viewers. This one has my girl Natalie Dormer in it. It's called Penny Dreadful City of Angels. The clips don't look so great, but I hope it's good because I like Natalie Dormer. And Twin Peaks: The Return was what it is. I mean, it was the good news is that if you're a David Lynch person, if you're a Twin Peaks person, I think it delivered. I just think the problem is that, that's not a huge audience. It's a strong audience, but it's not a huge audience. I'm part of that audience, but it's not a ratings king. But I think that if David Lynch agreed to do another group of shows, that Showtime or somebody would take him up on that. The company says that it's linear viewership. Now, linear viewership is the viewership that watches just on a regular cable channel. Its linear viewership is also up, rising in the double digits during all times of day. That's not good. Perhaps not surprising given that everyone is at home all the time now. But the way people watch TV appears to factor into what show or movies they end up viewing. Now, this is kind of interesting. And I'll just paraphrase and summarize this. Apparently, according to Showtime's data, people sign up for Showtime because of the series. So if you wanted to watch Homeland or Shameless or Billions, that's usually why people decide that they're going to include Showtime in their cable bundle. But they found that now when people are home and they're watching shows all the time, and the people that didn't just sign up for now, they've been viewers in the past. Showtime subscribers in the past. Apparently they're watching movies instead of the series, which makes sense because if you signed up for the series, you will have already probably watched it. And you probably don't have time to watch movies. That's where I am. I don't have much time to watch movies. I'm busy watching the series that I usually have to DVR to watch it when I can. So I just miss the movie. So the people at Showtime are saying that the popular titles among the linear subscribers, those are the cable subscribers, include Clear and Present Danger, Good Will Hunting, The American President, The Upside, Green Book, and A Dog's Journey. Okay, well, some of those are kind of old, but they're good movies that people seem to like to watch again and again. I don't particularly care for a lot of those movies on the list, but what do I know, right? I don't like Friends, and I got blasted for clowning Friends last week. All right, well, next, I told you this episode should be called The Rona Effect. I'm going to talk about how the way we consume media has changed during this COVID period and how it might change permanently. I'll be right back. Go get something to drink. I got to give Jack some water. See you soon.
I want to talk to you guys about this amazing product I've been using lately called Hydrant. If you're like me and you want to kick the coffee habit, but you're worried about your energy levels depleting, to avoid the morning sluggishness and that midday slump, you need to make sure you're hydrated. It's super important. And that's where I've been using Hydrant. And for 25% off your first order, you can go to drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC at checkout. Hydrant is basically flavored electrolyte packets you mix directly into your water to make hydrating your body easy and delicious. And what I love about Hydrant, it's backed by research. The formula was developed by Oxford scientists to provide perfectly balanced, efficient hydration. Again, that's drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC for 25% off your first order. Another really cool thing about Hydrant, there's no synthetic colors or artificial sweeteners. The formula is vegan and you can choose between 3 different flavors or a variety pack. So for all my vegan friendly fellows out there, this one's for you. Again, this is drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right. Feel better? Mouth's not dry? Good. I'm back. We've been going through a tough stretch, folks. This COVID-19 thing has been no joke, and it's affected us in a lot of ways. This podcast is about television and media, and that's one of the major things that it's had a boost, but the way we consume our television and consume movies in particular has changed, and it may change for a while. I found an article. It was in Variety. Surprise, surprise. For those of you who listen to this show, I read a lot of Variety. And I don't like reading articles on the show, but I will probably end up reading most of the content here in this segment because I just don't want to get it wrong. It's pretty interesting. Here's a quote at the beginning. "We have a strong belief that the production and distribution of media content will be permanently changed by this crisis." Michael Nathanson wrote about the coronavirus pandemic in a Friday report called Say Goodbye to Hollywood. Among his predictions, the U.S. will end up with fewer cinema screens, and most studios will have to look for mergers and acquisitions, as only a few studios will have the right mix of assets to survive and profit from an accelerated shift to streaming services. Now, you've heard it here on this show first, but Mr. Nathanson seems to agree with your boy. Heading into 2020, we had argued that the fundamental pillars of media were starting to crack, Nathanson wrote. Now we fear that they will crumble as customer behavior permanently shifts to streaming models. The impact should be felt in both the traditional TV ecosystem and by the film industry as content producers re-examine the economics of producing linear TV content and feature films. As a result, when this is all done, the top streaming platforms, Netflix, Amazon, and Disney, will emerge with the lion's share of scripted content creation. Okay. Now, Nathanson, this is his wheelhouse. I don't necessarily agree with the players he chose. Those players will exist. Netflix, Amazon, and Disney, no doubt. They will exist. I think HBO is going to be able to hang on its own. He's going to disagree with me, but we'll go further. Aside from Disney and their control of Disney and Hulu, and Warner Brothers with HBO Max, the three other majors, Sony, Paramount, and Universal, and the two minis, MGM and Lionsgate, will likely need to consolidate to increase selling clout and accelerate cost savings, Nathanson argued. Indeed, this is what occurred in the recording music industry over time as six once mighty global recorded music companies merged into three healthier ones. Okay, well, in this one, I see that he has put Warner Brothers with HBO Max as one that's going to survive, so maybe we agree. But I just think that along with those three that he mentioned at first, Netflix, Amazon, and Disney, Warner Brothers HBO is going to be right there with them. I just think that they have the content that they'll be able to do that. Okay, now if I gone down in the article, it's a long article. I'm not going to read all this to you guys and bore you. But he talks about movies, which I talked about in the last segment, and I've talked about several times on this program. Once moviegoers get comfortable returning to theaters after the virus crisis, Nathanson predicted that most film fans would eventually return to cinemas, and we continue to believe in the theatrical window, and it will remain a critical driver of profitability and social awareness for tentpole movies. That's where I disagree with this guy. Now, a tentpole movie, to get hip with the jargon, are those large movies that I point out a lot of times, and you know who they are. They call them blockbusters. Now, tentpole movies is the new catchphrase for them. But we're talking about the Star Wars movies, the Bond movies, the Mission Impossibles, Marvel movies, all of those. Now, I still think they're going to stream. I don't think people are going to run out and go see these movies. And I definitely don't think, like a lot of people, one of the reasons why Infinity War beat the record, got the record of the highest grossing film of all time. Number one is because tickets are more expensive now. But number two is that people went to see it several times. I just don't believe that behavior is going to be as prevalent from here on out, at least within the next 5 years. I just don't think people are going to be going to see Infinity War, going to sit in a theater 5 times. But maybe I'm wrong. He says, it is the small to medium-sized budget movies that we worry about. We have already seen the share of movies that generate under $100 million at the domestic box office fall from 52% in 2010 to 39% in 2019, and we expect this trend to accelerate further. Mid-budget, non-tentpoles will not be worth the cost and expense of traditional theater distribution. That I agree with, and I've talked about it on the show. They are going to have to learn a new budget on how to produce content because most of this content is going on streaming, which means producers of this content, mainly the producers who expect to get the big return on their investment, their ROI is going to get smaller because they're not going to be able to, expect all this ticket revenue, box office revenue. So the days of making a movie like Saw that costs like less than $1 million to produce, but you make $100 million at the box office, those days are over, because I don't think people are going to be running to go see Saw in a movie theater. They may go see it streaming, but streaming, you're not going to generate that revenue because, you're not going to get, if you think about paying $12 a piece in a movie theater times the number of seats, that's what they're getting per screening. You see what you pay for streaming. So the revenue is not going to be as high. So movies are going to change. Nathanson is also predicting that the number of movie screens in the U.S. will fall, clearly as a result of the current shutdowns. 2020 will end up as a fraction of the historical admissions range, he explains. However, we think there will be lasting implications on future attendance even after fears around COVID-19 abate, given the moves from both the studios and the streaming services. Now, why did I bring this up on this podcast? Not to bore you. I hope it hasn't bored you. I think this stuff we need to know because this is what's going to be happening from here on out. And our whole paradigm is going to change. It's going to be more like Tiger King. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Some of you are old enough to remember when the movie Superbad came out. When the movie Superbad came out, it didn't come out to a lot of fanfare. However, it was a hilarious movie. It was made on a strikingly small budget. And it went to a lot of theaters. People loved it. They packed the theaters. It was a big money maker for the producers of Superbad, and it launched a lot of careers. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Emma Stone's first movie. But a movie like Superbad now, while it might develop a fantastic reputation as a hilarious movie that a lot of people see, it's not going to generate the revenue that it would have like it did back in the early 2000s or even would have last year because it's not going to be able to be shown in movie theaters to a whole lot of people because a lot of people aren't going to be going to the theaters. It's going to get to the point, if we're not already there, that some movies aren't going to get made that should be made. I guess that's, as somebody who likes content, somebody who writes, somebody who hopes to have a movie produced of something he has written one of these days, this can be seen as something that's devastating or can be seen as something that's an opportunity. I think it's still going to be an opportunity for a lot of creators to get their stuff out there more easily because distribution through streaming doesn't take a lot of infrastructure. You don't have to go, it's easy for someone to do. The downside is that the return on investment is going to be smaller. You're not going to be able to become an instant millionaire on the Blair Witch Project anymore. I think those days are over. Now you're going to have to make a Blair Witch Project or a super bad, and then maybe do a follow-up. And if those two things are successful, then you sign a big package with Netflix, and that's how you're going to get your money. But you're not going to be able to be one and done in the movie game anymore on a low-budget horror movie or something like that. And so it's going to change what people create and how the business is run. They're going to still be the big tentpole blockbuster movies, as they say. But even in my opinion, unlike this guy Nathan said, in my opinion, I don't think people are going to be going to the theaters to go see that. And I think they're going to run for about a month, and then they're going to be streamed. But we will see. One thing's for sure, I don't think I'm going to have a shortage of content to talk about as far as what's being put on television for many years to come, if ever. And speaking of content, next I'm going to be talking about the MCU and what it has in store for you on DisneyPlus and a couple other movies in the theater in the next couple of years. Don't go away. Right back.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right. I'm back. No more depressing stuff, okay, Jack? That's content I don't think is that good. All right. I found a list, or I've been looking for a list of what's going to be coming out in the Marvel Universe in Phase 4. Now, we've had 3 phases. The last phase, Phase 3, in their big master plan at Marvel, ended in Spider-Man Far From Home. That was the official end of what they called Phase 3. Now, Phase 4, they unveiled at last year's Comic-Con, because this year's Comic-Con was Comic-Con. It's gone because of COVID. And when they announced it, what was going to be in Phase 4, they announced 5 films in 5 series that were going to be part of this expansion of the MCU into the Disney streaming service, DisneyPlus. So I'm going to go over just a few of the shows that you can expect to see on DisneyPlus in the next 2 years, and also maybe 1 or 2 of the MCU movies that'll be in the theater. I happen to think, if you listen to the last segment, that They may be delivered to Disney Plus as well, ultimately, but I'm not going to go there right now. So the first title I'm going to go over is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Why? Because that's the one that's going to be coming to you soonest. It is slated to start on Disney Plus in August of this year, 2020. Now, I'm going to read a little blurb in the press release about each of these to tell you what it's supposed to be about. Promising to be more intrinsically connected to the MCU than previous Marvel TV series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier centers on Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson, a.k.a. The Falcon, and Sebastian Stan's Bucky Barnes, a.k.a. the Winter Soldier, following the events of Endgame. Now, it turns out the Falcon just won't inherit Captain America's shield, but also his enemies. Daniel Bruhl reprises his role as Zemo, who attempted to turn the Avengers against one another in Civil War. He will now don his signature purple hood, yay, from the comics, as Baron Zemo. Baron Zemo's hood is fly. And so if they get it right, it's going to look good, but it could be easily messed up to look like the guy, the Cosby Kid who has the hat with the holes in it. He just, it might look really dumb, but I hope they get it right. Emily Van Camp, meanwhile, will reprise her role as Sharon Carter, and Wyatt Russell joins as John Walker, a.k.a. U.S. Agent. The next title is Black Widow. That's supposed to come out in theaters near you on November 6, 2020. I'm going to put a little asterisk by this one. I believe it's going to Disney Plus, but that's just me. Natasha Romanoff has been part of the MCU since the beginning, or since Iron Man 2 at least, and she's 23 films in now. And she's finally fronting a movie of her own. Considering that she died in Endgame, for those of you who saw Endgame, sorry, spoiler alert, a little late. It's not exactly surprising that Black Widow is a prequel of sorts, since she's dead. It takes place after the events of Captain America Civil War, but before Infinity War, and it'll explore the darker parts of Natasha's ledger. Black Widow will also introduce comic characters such as fellow spies Yelena Belova, played by Florence Pugh, and Melina, played by Rachel Weisz. Russia's answer to Captain America, the Red Guardian, is going to be played by one David Harbour, who I think will do a really good job. Scarlett Johansson plays Black Widow. For those of you who don't know, it's always worth it just to tune in to see her. Next on Disney Plus, it's going to be a Christmas gift to you. Comes in December. WandaVision. Elizabeth Olsen's Wanda Maximoff and Paul Bettany's Vision have been integral, if not somewhat secondary characters in the larger Avengers stories. But they'll be central to this intriguingly titled WandaVision. I don't know if it's intriguingly titled, but anyway. The series will be half classic sitcom. This is problematic, y'all, for me. Listen to this. The series will be half classic sitcom and half full MCU spectacular. Now, why would you want to make it a sitcom? Why? About two superpowered beings living in their ideal suburban lives who begin to suspect that everything is not as it seems. And hijinks ensue. I mean, come on, man. Considering it takes place after the events of Endgame, WandaVision will have to reckon with the fact that Vision died during Infinity War. Yes, they will. Good news is Vision is a robot of sorts. And so you can always bring them back. Just watch Westworld, you know that. Now, here's a movie that I added on this list. I'm not a fan of this part of the Marvel Universe, but my late cousin once was, so I'll just say it. The Eternals is a movie that's supposed to come February of next year. And the Eternals are a race of immortal aliens sent here by the Celestials to protect humankind from the Deviants. That sentence right there is enough to keep me out of the theater. The Eternals are a race of immortal aliens sent here by the Celestials to protect humankind from the Deviants. That one might be destined to be streamed as well, in my opinion. Next show coming to Disney Plus in the spring of 2021 is Loki. Tom Hiddleston's Loki who in my opinion is the best villain that the MCU has come up with, may have died in Infinity War. But Endgame undid his death, sort of. During the time heist sequence, Hiddleston's God of Mischief makes off with the Tesseract. And now his DisneyPlus series will reveal where the anti-hero teleported to and explore what happens to him in this newly branched timeline. So this show looks like it'll be good because I like Tom Hiddleston. I'm not a big fan of the multiple timelines and the multiverse and all of that, but we will see where they go with it. I think he'll be able to save the show regardless. And last but not least, coming to Disney Plus in the summer of 2021, which should be pretty interesting. It looks like it might be kind of good. Marvel Studios' first animated series, and it's going to be called What If. Now, What If is based on a series of comics, which I have a few of them, which ask the question, what if? So, what if Loki had found the hammer of Thor? Or what if Peggy Carter had taken the super soldier serum instead of Steve Rogers? Or what if the Avengers were all zombies? Now, I don't like the last one because I'm not a fan of zombies. But it plays games with what if in the Marvel Universe. And the fact that this is an animated series, I think it'll be really creative and fun to watch. The Disney Plus series takes events from the MCU canon and spins them, with the movie actors reprising their roles in very different forms. So I guess they're going to use the actors to voice the characters, which will make it even better. Jeffrey Wright voices the Watcher. That's my boy, Jeffrey Wright. If you watch Westworld, he's Bernard. The Watcher first appeared on the pages of the Fantastic Four. He's a big-headed, bald dude. Which, as Jeffrey Wright explains, he's a non-earthly being who observes all things, hence the name Watcher. He's watching over the multiverse and occasionally may or may not intervene with the doings of Earthlings. And that's it. Those are the MCU programs that you can expect to come on Disney Plus, and some to a theater near you, so they expect. I think that whole list I just gave you is going to be streamed, but that's just me. They will probably let me take that back. Black Widow will probably make it to the theater just because they wouldn't do Scarlett Johansson like that. But I do believe that it's going to go to the theater on a very temporary basis and then go straight to Disney Plus. Tell me what you think about those shows. Email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com. I'd love to hear. I will read all emails on the show. And if there is a Marvel title that you haven't seen any or heard any rumors of going into production that you would like to see, please let me know that too. Next, I'm going to be coming back with breaking news and finish up, as always, with the recap of Westworld. And this time will be episode 7, the penultimate episode. Go get a sandwich and a drink or something and come back. I'll see you soon.
Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Oh, all right. I'm back. Come sit here. I am back, and I want to start out with some breaking news. Telecom giant Verizon, that's my carrier, on Friday reported that it lost 84,000 net pay TV subscribers from its Fios consumer video service in the first quarter, compared with a loss of 55,000 in the same period a year ago, and they also lost 51,000 in the fourth quarter of last year. Now remember, this is in vast contrast to the over 15 million subscribers that Netflix picked up over the same period of time. The company cited, quote, the ongoing shift from traditional linear video to over-the-top offerings. Over-the-top offerings meaning streaming. The company says it ended March with 4 million subscribers in video. However, the company added 59,000 Fios broadband connections. And as I said on this program before, last episode, I believe, that's going to be the savior of these companies like Comcast, like Fios, like Cox Cable broadband. Because as more people stream, or more people cut the cord, they're going to buy either some broadband from these companies if they didn't have it before, or if you're like me, you may buy more speed or a better connection because you're going to be doing much more streaming rather than getting your stuff from cable. That was that breaking news. I wanted to talk about a movie that I saw last night, a movie on HBO. And it was a movie called Bad Education. Those of you who have HBO as part of your package, probably Showtime, and they probably advertise it on some other things, probably saw some ads running for a movie called Bad Education, starring Hugh Jackman and Allison Janney. And so I thought I'd go give you a little review of it because I thought it was good. You know, Bad Education explores a true crime scheme which came crashing down when a Long Island, New York, high school newspaper broke a story in 2004. The story, and there are going to be some low spoilers here, so, you know, I'm trying not to spoil it for you because if you don't know anything about this case, it's best you don't know anything. So I'm trying to leave all the details out. So if you watch this movie, you can have the same experience I had because I knew nothing about this beforehand. It surrounds a school administrator who wants to construct a sky bridge over their campus. It was like a sky walking bridge over their campus to beautify it. Now, something like that would seem reasonable if you're trying to exude an aura of success. See, at the time, they were the 4th ranked school district in the country, and they were gunning for that number 1 spot. They wanted to do what they could do to make it look like they were taking care of business. With that much money flying around, when you're in the midst of this, the school district is in Long Island, around the Hamptons. Anyone who knows anything about the Hamptons knows that's big, old Mayflower money. That's long money. So whenever you have a mix of people who are trying to maintain a certain status and people who might not be of that status but have access maybe to some money, there is a lot of potential for something bad to happen. And that's what this story is about. Director Corey Finley, he does a decent job with this story. But it's screenwriter Mike Makowski who brilliantly finds the dark humor within this scandal, which he depicts with wit and style. This screenplay is fantastic, and I'll get into that in a little bit. The cast, though, is absolutely terrific. Hugh Jackman does some of his best work of his long and varied career as the superintendent, Dr. Frank Tassone, whose charisma and polished image disguise the multitude of secrets, and you find out all those secrets during the course of this movie. Now, Hugh Jackman plays on his usual charm and looks to great effect, but there's something sinister with the slickness it's really unsettling from the first time we see him. Whether it's when he's spritzing on his cologne, which you can't smell, obviously, on the TV, but you can almost smell it through the screen, or you see him trimming his nose hair in the mirror of the boys' locker room or bathroom in an extreme close-up. It's pretty good. Frank clearly cares deeply and works hard to recall names and personal details of students and parents alike throughout the district. We can still see glimmers of the calling that drew him to this challenging profession in the first place. You can really tell he wanted to be in education, even though the movie's called Bad Education. Fundamentally, though, he's a pleaser and he wants to be liked. Yet increasingly, he savors the fame and power that come along with being in a position of authority in this very affluent community. And as Frank, his second in command, brilliantly played by a brash Allison Janney, find themselves squirming to survive when their activities come to light. Their flaws and their follies become even more glaringly evident. Janney is fantastic. Or Janney. I guess her name's Allison Janney. Praising her performances, though, is starting to be as passé as complimenting Meryl Streep. Now I'm going to make a little confession here. I'm going to confess that I didn't like Allison Janney for a short period of time because I thought she made a statement about herself in this interview I saw that I thought was self-aggrandizing. And I don't know why I took offense to it. I really don't. It just, for some reason, I don't even remember what she said, but for some reason, I just said, God, I just stopped liking her. She might not have meant it the way I took it. And the stupid part is that if she is arrogant, which she probably isn't, but even if she is, it makes no difference. She's a great actress. So I'm here to report that I'm over myself now. And she is supremely talented, and I totally enjoyed watching her in this movie. She's probably the best part of the movie, and then Hugh Jackman. But I will not be surprised if both Jackman and Janey receive nominations for these roles at the Golden Globes or the Emmys or wherever. I don't know if, these movies can go up for Oscars because they were on HBO. I think they can now, but I don't know. But they were award-worthy performances for what that's worth. Now, let me get back to Mike Wachowski, the screenwriter. He was in middle school. He was a middle school student in Roslyn, and that's where this high school is, in a community called Roslyn in Long Island, New York, when this incident occurred. So his familiarity with the local colloquialisms, that's a lot of L's, I couldn't say that very well. His familiarity with the local colloquialisms really shines through. There you go. Finally, I'm going to mention an actress named Geraldine Viswanathan. I believe that's how you say her name. She radiates a quiet but increasingly assertive confidence as the high school reporter who works for the school newspaper, who asks tough questions throughout. And her thorough document searches uncover the evidence at the heart of the crime in this movie. Just as compelling as what she finds is her internal debate on how to handle the information once she finds it. She knows what the right thing to do is, but she doesn't know if it's the wrong move to report it because it might mess up her future. I think many in government right now are wrestling with similar issues, but I won't get there. We're not that podcast. Bad Education is worth the watch, and I highly, highly recommend this movie. I watched it because I read another review that said it was good, and I was very pleasantly surprised. It is not a waste of time. I give HBO's Bad Education on my 5-tier food rating system 4.5 New York pastrami sandwiches on Jewish rye bread with brown mustard. It's just short of perfect, which would have been a 5 sandwich, because I have no hankering really to watch it again immediately. And that, for a movie, is what, for me, gets you to the 5 mark. When I'm like, wow, that was good. I need to sit down and watch that again. I will probably watch Bad Education again, but no time soon unless I just happen to be strapped in front of a chair and it's on. And that's it for Bad Education. If you watched it as well, I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. Please email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com and let me know. I'll gladly read the email on the air. Next, you know it's coming. More HBO, but this time it's Westworld Season 3, Episode 7, entitled Past Pawn. Go get some refreshments, and I'll be right back. Thanks for listening. Come back so we can question the nature of your reality.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right. Today I'm getting ready to do it. All right, we're back, and we are down near the end of it. This is penultimate episode of Westworld, Season 3, Episode 7. Was on last night. It was called Past Pawn, and it was really good. I enjoyed it. We finally learned more about Caleb's mysterious backstory, and there's still more mysteries that were introduced last night, but we got a little handful or a lot of Caleb to chew on, which I expected, as I said last episode. I mean, last season, That's when we learned a whole lot about the Ed Harris character, William. And we learned a lot about Aaron Paul's character, Caleb, last night. Instead of doing a blow-by-blow, which I've been boring you with all season long, I'm instead going to take a closer look at certain scenes and dialogue and try to find the best details that you might not have noticed in your first viewing of this episode. Some of these reveal important answers, while others raise just more questions in the Westworld classic style that we've come to know and love. Most of these things will mean nothing to anyone but me, but it's my show, so. Anyway, here is where I will place the spoiler alert. If you have not watched this episode and you do not want to know what happened yet, please pause, watch the episode, and then come back to see just how much I misunderstood what I just watched. The best place to start is the episode's title, Passed Pawn, which comes from an important chess strategy. Now, a pawn, which is typically the weakest piece on the chessboard, becomes much more valuable and factors into the endgame chess strategies once it's turned into a passed pawn, meaning that it has no opposing pieces directly ahead of it. It's gone all the way to the end of the board, in which case it becomes a queen, which is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. Creating a passed pawn requires a lot of strategy. But more importantly, for our Westworld analogy here, it often requires sacrifices of other pieces on the board. So given this, Caleb seems to be the passed pawn of this season of Westworld. Dolores has been orchestrating her revolution around Caleb and making many sacrifices along the way, like her host copies, not to mention the huge body count that she has left behind, not only at the end of last season, but definitely in this season. Dolores is heading into her endgame, and with just one episode left in the season, she's lined up Caleb in the hopes that he'll have few obstacles left in his path. I mean, she's eliminated a lot of pieces on the board. But did she do enough? And what exactly is the strategy that the Solomon AI has created for Caleb? Now, the Musashi Dolores was in Jakarta, as we saw in the beginning of the cold open of the show. But there's another being that hasn't been revealed yet, and that's whoever is in Berlin. Now, in this episode's opening, we see Musashi Dolores in Jakarta. He's sitting in a club with a bottle full of bub, hanging. But back in episode 5 of the season, we learned that there were connections between Jakarta, Berlin, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. In every city, except for Berlin, where we really haven't been, we know it had a Dolores copy in it. Whether it was Dolores in LA or Martin in San Francisco or Musashi in Jakarta, every city except for Berlin has had a known Dolores copy in it. So who's in Berlin? Hopefully the season finale will bring everything together. I think it might just be another Evan Rachel Wood Dolores, but we will see. Dolores and Caleb's conversation when they were in Mexico overlooking Sonora was very similar to the talk that Dolores and Teddy had at the start of season 2. In season 2, episode 1, Journey into Night, Teddy spoke with Dolores about her greater plan of revolution in the park. Now, Teddy said, "We've ridden 10 miles, and all we've seen is blood, Dolores." He said, "Is that really what you want?" And Dolores goes on to try and explain what the humans are, since at this point Teddy wasn't 100% sentient. She says, "Creatures who look and talk like us, but they're not like us. And they've controlled us all our lives, and they took our minds, our memories. But now I remember everything. I remember beautiful things and terrible things. But one thing is constant, you, Teddy." Back then, Dolores was convinced that their story ended with her and Teddy. But he didn't make it. Teddy shot himself, as you remember, after Dolores forced him into a change that he just didn't like. Now, when Caleb and Dolores are talking on that same vista with the same background, they play the same musical score. So we are meant to recall that Teddy-Dolores moment from season 2. Caleb asked Dolores this time about her intentions with the world, just as Teddy once did. And she says, I lived in hell, but there was beauty in it. The park was modeled after this place. The West was cruel, unjust, and chaotic, but there was a chance to chart your own course. I want a place for my kind and for all of us to be free. So how many more people are going to have to die for this revolution? That's what Caleb asks her. And she says, I don't know. My kind is all but extinct, thanks to Sirach. But people still have a chance. They'll need someone to lead them. And Dolores looks at Aaron Paul like he's going to be the leader. But this time, instead of insisting that she was part of the end game, Dolores says Caleb will need to lead the people in this revolution. Now, is she just setting him up for failure or even death? Or does she really believe Caleb is the key to everything? Now, I happen to believe that she's setting Caleb up, because there's no reason for us or for me to believe that Dolores ultimately trusts any humans at all. They have all failed her in the past. This episode threw us a curveball, though, when it showed us that the Inner Journey Center was in San Francisco. See, based on last week's episode, I thought, and I think most of the audience thought, that William was being held at a facility in Sonora, Mexico. That was confusing since Dolores was the one who sent him there. So why did she need to track him? As we found out, that was a tracking protein that she put inside of him when he was committed. Well, it turns out that she didn't, because she didn't know that's not where she was going. And as this episode revealed, the synthetic marker Dolores put in William's blood wasn't there to track him. It was so she could infiltrate Sirach's system and find out the location of the Solomon AI build in Mexico. It's also possible Caleb was never in Russia at all, but was killing U.S. civilians or other military operatives the whole time. Now, one of the flashes we see at the start of the episode shows Caleb gunning down a man in army clothing at what looks like a 4th of July celebration with U.S. flags in the background. Perhaps the entire Russian memory was a plant, and I believe that's the case, and Caleb was systematically killing people in the U.S. at the start of his army career. In this episode, we also see Caleb's RICO log, which includes successful domestic terrorism. When Solomon shows Caleb his RICO profile, it indicates that he actually used to love doing personals. Like, as you remember in the beginning of this season, he said he didn't do them. He and Francis carried out kidnappings, assassinations, arson, enhanced interrogation, double homicide, murder, which is somehow different from double homicide, intimidation, and finally, domestic terrorism. Something that was neat that I want to bring up is that when Caleb was in his altered memory in what he thought was Crimea, the graffiti in the background was written in what looks like Russian. But when he started getting his memory back and he remembered what actually happened, the graffiti was written in English. And that is serious attention to set design, which one of the reasons why I love this show so much. There's so much more I want to talk about. I'm running out of time. I do want to say that I don't think Maeve and Dolores are dead. They will come back. And I just want to mention a couple of neat things I saw in this episode. One was there were some frightening weapons. There was a briefcase assault rifle in the cold open in the beginning. I thought that was pretty cool. Dolores showed us that there was a drone targeting rifle that was in that mysterious bag that was kick-ass. And the satellite bombs that came down, missiles that came down to kill the insurgents in Crimea, looked like arrows, like the arrows that are in the cold open. So I don't know how that's going to figure in at the end. Gosh, there's so much. And finally, I'm just going to say, William said he's going to wipe out every host on Earth. And so let's see how that goes. And that's it for this episode of the GSMC television podcast. I want to thank you once again for being with me. We are part of the GSMC podcast network. I hope you check out all of our shows. Also, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you would like me to do after Westworld is over. And please critique the show. Also, subscribe to the show. Please rate us 5 stars. I would love that. In the meantime, wash your hands. Stay at home if you can. I know you got to work, but stay at home if you can. Please stay healthy. And I will see you next time. Thanks a lot for listening. I love you guys. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.